Tina Lugassi here from Heirloom Designs, and today I'm going to show you a little modification you can make to the lemon wreath so that the lemons are actually made by hand with whip stitching versus having to lug out the sewing machine. So I've got a few that are already made up here, so you can kind of see it's literally just a whip stitch that you're going to be doing around each of the segments when you're attaching them. And other than that, you also are not flipping it right side out like you would if you were machine stitching. This ends up being your final side. Okay, so I've got a few made up already, and I'm going to do the large version with you. So I'm going to start by just putting two of these together. And keep in mind that your pattern, so I'm just going to go in between the two pieces so that I'm hiding that knot. And I'm going to whip stitch from approximately the center down there to the center down here. So keep in mind that the pattern accounts for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can go fairly generous with your whip stitching across. Like normally I would do a tighter whip stitch, but if you want this to kind of come out the same relative size once you stuff it as the machine sewn version, then you're going to want to pay attention to that. To be honest with you, I did not pay attention to that on these small ones, but they came out just fine as is. That's probably more like a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to keep going around like this. Okay, so you can see that I've made it around and I've stopped at that end. So now I'm going to take my third piece. And just like in the machine sewn version, you're going to be matching up where that ends and continue to sew it. So I want to make sure that my points are as lined up as I can. Take a stitch in there just to secure it, and then I can start to focus on lining up these two edges. And now I'm going to continue my whip stitch up this side, and on this one I'm going to end right up there again. So I'm just coming up to the last little bit of this side. So the beauty of having the option to make this wreath completely just using hand sewing and not having to be plugged in is you can work on it in front of the TV or outside and really take a chance to relax, maybe with a cup of tea, and do your sewing. So now I've got my third side. So I don't know if you noticed, but when I started hand sewing, I started at this rounded part versus the pointy end because I wanted my stuffing end to be down here so that I have the easiest time to get some stuffing down into that nubbin end, because you know how like the lemon comes down and makes little nubs. So I did do that on purpose. So now I am just going to come around and start in on this final segment. So this one I'm going to stitch it probably up until about there, and then we'll pause and we'll start stuffing and then continue to stitch and stuff as we go. Okay, so you can see that I've stopped here. I've still got this section open, and now I'm going to grab my stuffing material. I have some sheep wool here, and I'm actually going to start with a bit of a smaller piece. I find that when we don't grab the stuffing too big of a piece, it's easier to get a nice even shape. So we're just gonna not burst through the seam. I'm just gonna come in there and try to fill up that nubbin end. I'm sure someone's gonna come back to me and tell me the official correct term for that, because I don't know what it is. Just the end of the lemon, I guess. Not the stem end. So the point here, I like to stuff them fairly firm, these lemons. I find it gives me an opportunity to get a really nice rounded shape. Okay, so at this point you can see I've stopped here for a moment and that I've stuffed pretty firmly, and while I've been stuffing, I've been trying to maintain this curvature all around the lemon. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to go a little further with my stitching. Okay, so I probably just made about 4 more stitches, and now I'm just going to assess and see, yeah, I'm going to get a bit more stuffing in there, because otherwise I'm going to end up with a bit of an air pocket in this section that I'm sewing up. All right, and then at that point I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish this off. So you're basically, at this point, you kind of have to eyeball. If you're doing the 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're going to have to kind of eyeball on either side. Trying to line up your needle and do your best to close this off, your whip stitch. And again, if you've got a side seam, my side's not looking as nicely as these ones, that's okay. That's the side that I'll end up putting my leaf and cover it over so it's not really noticeable. And I'm going to come in here and finish that off. So I'll show you how to finish off this lemon. And I've already got these other ones pre-made. So then we'll rebuild this wreath using this version of lemon. And you can see how that's going to look as an option for you. Okay, so like the other lemons, we're just going to take the stem end, and either with a large needle or your awl, make a little space for your stem wire to go in. A little bit of glue in there. And then I'm going to take a little bud bottom and then add a little more glue at this base to hold that in place. And then, like the other lemons, this gets finished off with 2 of the small leaves. And I'm going to find my wonky one is right there. So I'm going to put my lemon leaves around it. And then I'm just going to twist this together. All right, the other thing is I actually have, I believe this is it's a 14-inch wreath. So this is quite a large one that I'm working on. I'm curious to see how it's going to look. I may have to add more. Okay, so once I've got my first one glued in place, I want this one facing inwards. So I'm going to go right here. Okay, I'm just deciding where along here I want to place this one. I do find the wreaths that have more of like a brushed metal to them, like this one, it's got like a slight texture to it, and I do find the hot glue holds quite a bit better than the really smooth ones. So if you do find that your glue's not holding, don't hesitate to either go over top of it with some crazy glue or use crazy glue instead. Or if you've got another method for attaching picks and things to wreaths, then by all means do that. If you're working with like a grapevine wreath, it's a little bit easier to stick the picks right in. All right, and then we're gonna get this last one. All right, probably about there. So I'm actually trying to space them just that little bit more because I am working on a bigger wreath hoop. And then I was thinking on the ends, what I might do is add in an extra couple of green leaves. And then this one, so I'm going to switch to this side and do the last one over here. Again, you can cut off this extra length of wire. I'm just going to put it right in there. Okay, and once that's all dry, that one's going to come up there. And I put from the original design, I'm going to go ahead and put these 2 large leaf picks at the very end. And then I'm going to, once I get them both on there, I'll flip the wreath and glue them in place. All right, so I'm going to flip this wreath back over. And we'll do just a very light fluffing, I'm going to call it right now, where we're going to kind of pull the picks apart a little bit. So see how you want things looking. But I think spacing wise, this is all looking pretty good. I've got this going this way. I might continue that direction and keep these all sort of heading in that direction. Okay, so I'm back with this wreath. I flipped it over. I have a few pieces that I added on just because this is such a larger hoop. To be honest with you, I did actually try to go all the way around with a few more pieces, but I think if you're going to do the full wreath, you're going to want to continue on your lemon pattern throughout. So I've just added on past, I haven't glued them in yet. I've got a blossom with a triple leaf pick. And I've got 2 more just singles over here that I'm going to be gluing in place. And then on this side, I've added one more blossom and one more leaf. And that's kind of taken me up over the halfway point. And I think in terms of how this is looking, it looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to flip this over and glue those last pieces in place, and then we will fluff out this wreath. Okay, I'm actually standing up now for this part because I find it a little easier to see what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of positioning the leaves, making sure that all of my my glued areas are hidden. And you just want to give it some movement, spread these things out like the other wreath that we did. Sure, not one area doesn't have like a clump of interesting stuff going on. Well, the bottom does, but that's kind of on purpose. Okay, so this wreath, everything here was made without having to use any sort of sewing machine. I did use my Cricut, obviously, to cut all the pieces out, but you can absolutely do that by hand. And yeah, so right now I'm just going to keep fluffing this wreath. So I hope that you consider making the Meyer Lemon Wreath by hand. You know, again, if you're somebody that's crafting in front of the television or doesn't have a sewing machine, I don't want you to feel like you can't play with this using what you've got on hand. And they come out really just as nice. In fact, you end up with a little bit more texture on the lemons from hand sewing them. So I think that looks great. Anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. It's kind of like a little supplemental video to go with the original Meyer Lemon Wreath, just to show you another way of completing the wreath. And this, again, this is on a 14-inch wreath, and you can see that I only added a few more components on either side, and it still works quite nicely. So I hope that you have enjoyed this and that you're gonna consider making this wreath, something a little different versus always having the flower florals around. And yeah, if you like what you saw, please subscribe below, then you're notified when I've got new videos coming out. Give the video a like, a thumbs up. It tells the YouTube, you know, people are liking my videos and they'll push them out to more crafters. So until next time, I wish you a happy crafty day.